What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Intention Training Talks. Today, I want to talk to you about why you or the athletes you coach might be getting pain in the shoulder when you guys lift in class. Specifically, we'll look at things like the bench press, the snatch, and the shoulder to overhead, whether it be strict press, or push strict. So I have three main points that I want to talk to you guys about today. The first one's going to be the muscles are not firing appropriately when they're pressing overhead. I feel like that should kind of be an obvious one, right? Like we're obviously doing something wrong with the muscles that is not firing correctly when we go overhead. So number one's going to be the pecs, the lats, and the obliques. And I want to talk about each of these, and I'll link a video on why tension is significantly more important than position, which is actually going to be a point that we'll talk about a little bit later. So the pecs, the lats, and the obliques, right? My pecs are going to be one of the main stabilizers of my shoulder when I lift overhead. And plenty of people do not feel their pecs when they go overhead, especially when they are either close or wide, which would be both for that bench press, that press overhead, and for the snatch. So if I'm not firing my pec when it goes overhead, and I can only fire it when it's here, I'm missing a huge shoulder stabilizer. And in unison with that, when my lat or my teres is not firing, then all of a sudden it's going to be my trap, my rear delt, and my rotator cuff that are really going to start to have to do a lot of the work when I go to lift overhead. A lot of times when I see people start to injure themselves when they don't fire the pecs, they don't fire the lats, and we'll talk about the obliques in a minute, it really comes down to a repetition-based problem. They're doing something a little bit wrong a lot of times for a really long time, and then eventually the body's like, whoa, we're messed up right now. We should not be doing this, right? The body's gonna whisper a little bit, and then it's gonna scream. So we want to pay attention to those whispers. It kind of aches when I do a bench press. I feel weird tension or clicking, but there's no pain. Those are signs. Pay attention to when those types of things happen. And then that final muscle that I want to bring up, besides the pec and the lat, which both are going to pec, bring the shoulder in, lat to press the shoulder down, is going to be the obliques, right? The muscles that run from my hip to my ribs. They're essentially anti-rotation, anti-flexion extension. And a lot of times when we just tell people, brace your core, well, they don't really know exactly what that should feel like. When I tell athletes in class, or when I myself am lifting and I want to be able to brace my obliques, it's this line right here, this connection up and down. It's not really just through the middle. Just because you feel here doesn't mean you'll feel the outside, and this is going to be what really has a huge impact on our rib and hip position, rather than just going, okay, tuck your hips, or don't arch your back as much, or press your head through the window, right? So again, those three muscles, the pec, the lat, and the oblique, we want to learn to fire those. I'll put some links down below or in the video here, and you guys will be able to see some of my favorite exercises to find the pecs, the lats, and the obliques as it regards to lifting overhead in the snatch, the press, or the bench press. Point number two is going to be we have too much of an outward pull on the bar, and this fits directly in with the muscles not firing correctly or not at all. Meaning, if I have a lifter here and they have a weight overhead, the pressure applied to the bar is going outward rather than up and in like an arch. StrongFit has an amazing drawing of this, and you can learn a lot from them when it comes to this type of tension as you lift overhead. But it would be if I grab the bar and I'm a little bit more aggressive towards my index finger and I'm pulling apart, well, it seems natural. I'm lengthening the pec, I'm going away from what the lat does, and then all of a sudden now the rear delt and the trap want to come to the party, and I am elevating and rolling inward as I lift a weight on the bench, on the overhead, or on the snatch. And so instead what I want to be able to do is apply a little bit more pressure through my pinky finger, be able to break the bar, so even though the hand is going down and slightly out, the bicep is coming in towards the head. And that inward pressure is going to be what makes such a huge difference to hold a heavy weight overhead, because now I'll fire the pec, I'll fire the lat, and it'll be easier for me to even feel my upper back as well, which is such a huge component of being able to lift heavy weights overhead or hold heavy weights overhead, whether that be lying down on a bench or when you guys do a snatch. So it's really important that I'm going to be able to press overhead and press inward as I do so. And again, the videos that I have linked, as far as the ones to find your pec, your lat, and your obliques, those will help you learn how to press in overhead. And then actually, one of the final points that I want to cover next is training too much with a barbell. The barbell is a very high skill movement, and when we train with it too often, it really hides and it kind of provides some deception around if we're moving incorrectly or not. And so when we don't lift with odd objects, slam balls, sandbags, dumbbells, kettlebells enough to often, insert whatever type of odd object you want, then it becomes really easy to create problems. That's not to say the barbell is a bad thing. You should train with a bar, especially if you're a sport-specific athlete like a powerlifter or Olympic weightlifter, or you like to compete in CrossFit because you're going to use a barbell. But my point would be, think about it, if I hold a sandbag, I have to be squeezing in as I press. And no, don't use the sandbag with the handles. Strong Fit makes really great sandbags. But I'm pressing inward as I go up overhead, or I'm holding it, pressing inward as I go overhead. Same thing with a plate. If I'm pinching a plate on the side here, whether I'm holding it overhead or even pressing with a plate like on a bench, I have to squeeze inward. I can't just hold it, or at least ideally I don't want to just hold it. I want to have intention and apply pressure in that inward position. So if I have something overhead, I want to be able to have that constant inward tension and really focus on what that means when I'm lifting in an overhead spot. In addition to that, let's think about rowing, right? I'm building my lats maybe, or trying to find tension overhead in that muscle when I'm training. So if I always row with a barbell, let's say a bent over row, well, that's not going to necessarily give me super easy control to find different ranges of motion for my lat. Meaning if I'm only pronated or supinated grip, that's really limiting, right? And again, I still want to use the bar, but I have the dumbbell, I have the sandbag, which means I have different ways to apply pressure to a weight. And when I do so, that allows me to find different ranges of control with my lat, with my teres, while also obviously maintaining the obliques. And when I'm able to do that, when I'm able to continually maintain that tension of pressing up and inward, not only training with a barbell, I get that really good transfer over, right? The reason why I love sandbags so much is because the sandbag transfers so wonderfully to a bar, but the bar does not transfer necessarily to a sandbag, right? Those are three of those key things that I think are extremely important to help prevent pain when your athlete lifts overhead. So again, just a quick recap, I think it's more of a repetition-based injury problem most of the time, unless someone, dislocates their shoulder or something. That would suck. But we're using a repetition-based problem where the muscles aren't firing correctly, and we're pushing too much outward pressure on the bar or the piece of equipment that we're using, and we're training too much with a barbell. When this happens, skill is not going to be the way to fix it. And I have another video that I'm going to talk about cueing athletes with feel and tension instead of position, and learning how to find the correct muscles. And we'll talk about tension over position in another video. I'll have the link below as well. But the point would be, if I don't know how to fire the right muscle, no amount of skill work correcting is going to fix it, okay? So if I cue an athlete, hey, lift your chest up, or hey, let's do really slow PVC pipe reps as we go through for your strict press or for your snatch, well, that doesn't solve the problem of them firing the wrong muscle, right? I have to work on finding the right tension as I go through. So those are those three main points that you can use. Don't forget to check out the exercises that I have listed to help you find your pec and your lat and your obliques. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe.